Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick. And in this episode, this is a preview of the Grizzlies Warriors game that I did. I was a guest on the Grizz Den Podcast. Some cool dudes out of Memphis. And it was a fun conversation. We talked a whole bunch of stuff about this game, the past, Dillon Brooks, the foul on GP2, Steph, Ja Morant, parallels between them. Similarities between the Grizzlies of the present and the Warriors of the past. So it was cool. It was cool. It was my first time talking to like real hardcore Memphis Grizzlies fans, and I dug it. I had a lot of fun, and we went on for a while. So in the show notes, you'll see all the topics that we talked about. Enjoy, and hey, happy holidays.
Welcome to a special first ever Christmas game day preview of the Grizz Den Pod. Will Walker was actually gracious enough to let me do my first ever Grizz Den hosting. So if there's some bumps in the road, I'm really sorry. I normally just sit back and y'all know me, just hang out and talk versus actually host this thing. So I'm going to put on my Jim Nance and try to make this happen. But today I'm super excited. We're joined by Patrick Apino, who runs the Oakland Warriors podcast. So make sure you go look him up. His stuff is great to kind of pay attention to whenever you're wanting to dig into the Warriors, whether it's the Grizz about to play the Warriors like Christmas Day, or if you just are kind of curious what's going on. He's got great stuff. His YouTube was actually really fun for me to dig into. You can find that at Oakland Warriors within YouTube, and all of his podcasts on all, I'm sure, streaming platform channels that we're all on. They give his video content a view as well. Patrick is part of the Basketball Podcast Network, TBPN, which is a mouthful, by the way. Same code as DraftKings. What's up, sponsors? And so we're super excited to actually have him as our first guest within the network on an official capacity. So, Patrick, thank you for being here. This is super fun for Ty and I.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it. When you first approached me about doing something, I was like, oh, this is going to be a great game. And now yeah. I'm not so sure.
You know, right, the Grizz lately have had they've done really great at making teams that have been struggling or not struggling beat them. So, you know, that could be part of the narrative that we talked about today. But also, welcome, Ty.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate
Ty
that.
Smith Sr. in the house. Glad
Happy
to have you.
Be here.
Yeah. So a couple of show notes. We're recording this on Thursday, the 22nd at 7:10. Patrick, I didn't tell you this in our little pre-talk, but in Memphis right now, it went from like 45 degrees to 18 in a span of 30 minutes. This really weird like polar vortex thing swooped in. So if like, I don't know, Memphis shuts down because of ice or something, then, you know, whatever. It was a fun show. But so all that to mean is that the Grizz have not played the Suns. That's tomorrow night, the 23rd. And then we go from the Suns, have a day of rest, and then we play in Golden State or at Golden State for that Christmas Day game, which is obviously the reason that we're all here together, is to sort of talk about that and preview that together. It's a fun thing. And the Grizz have never actually played on Christmas Day. So you'll be able to catch that game at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, sort of a headliner game that, to your point, Patrick, had a lot of buildup, and maybe we're creating some drama leading up to the game. And I think that's one of the things from a Grizz angle I just want to hit at the top. Literally about an hour and a half ago, and me, Ty, Kraft, and Will, who are the other two guys, Patrick, that run the Grizz Den Pod with us, the Grizz PR put out a tweet saying that Desmond Bane was questionable for tomorrow night's game, which sort of in the way that the Grizz medical staff runs and the PR team work together, that may be indicating that if he's not back tomorrow, then he's highly likely to be playing Christmas Day, which we have not seen Desmond Bane for at least a month. We have not seen Bane, Triple J, and Ja play together at all this entire season. So first, Ty, just wanted to maybe shoot to you really quickly. What was your emotion when you saw that tweet come through, man?
Just elation. So excited.
Thank you.
We talked about this, I don't remember when. Maybe it wasn't on a podcast. It wasn't, actually. So the classic cryptic tweet Patrick, I'm sure y'all's players occasionally will do that too. Desmond Bane just tweeted like the eyeball emoji, but it was actually during the World Cup. So everyone was like, oh, was that pertaining to like Messi doing something crazy, or is this an update? And then Ja Morant quickly commented underneath that, like a picture of them two like embracing during like the announcement of the starting lineup. So I think I knew it was coming soon. You could feel the Christmas Day. I was kind of hoping that would be game one. Looks like he may play against Phoenix. But yeah, if these last couple of games, so Patrick, we played OKC and lost pretty much wire to wire, and then played the Nuggets on national TV. I'm not sure if you watched that game or not. Also lost wire to wire. Neither one were really close. And basically what the defenses were doing is just packing the paint and sagging off everyone. And we couldn't hit open shots. I think we missed our first 10 against the Nuggets, threes, that is. Yep. So Bane he's like maybe the most important player on our team offensively. He's just he's a must. You have to have him for everything to work. I feel like when he's there, defenses can't continue to play the way they've been playing the last couple games. He's so dynamic, especially coming off any form of shooting. He's exceptional. So, yeah, it's going to be huge to get him back for sure.
And so the other little thing, just to sort of lead into this discussion, Patrick, is that Ja was interviewed by Malika Andrews, and this little snippet kind of got picked up on Aggregator and went viral, and sort of weird Grizz Warriors Twitterdom or whatever it is that one pays attention to their socials. And he was essentially sort of like asked, like, hey, when you're watching, the NBA, like, who are you scouting, paying attention to in terms of, who you're worried about? And he was like, Celtics. And then Malika was like, no one else in the West? And he was like, nah, I'm good with the West. And so it's just kind of like just a classic Ja thing. But, like, I'm sort of curious, like, even if we were talking about it, like, what does that do? Does that even do anything to a Warriors fan? You're like, dude, we've won so many championships. Like, don't even come talk to me, dude. Or like, are you like, no, I feel you coming at me a little bit. What's kind of Warriors fans? What do y'all feel when you see that kind of stuff?
I think it's interesting because, I've been a fan for a long time. And when the Warriors were terrible, like, you're always looking up at all the other teams. You know what I mean? When you get close, you're looking not so steeply up, maybe, but you're not there just yet. And then once you're there, it's like, okay, as a fan during this dynasty, it's very much like you've seen so much top level trash talk and all this stuff going across that it's like, okay, that's cool. That's fine. And, the other thing to me is that, as a Warriors fan who does a podcast episode after every game, like, I'm so much more involved in what the Warriors' problems are that, like, that's just noise to me. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
We accept the fact that there's a very good chance that the Grizz could come into Chase Center and just, do what the Nets did or do what the Knicks did. You know what I mean? I'm hoping for something more competitive, but that's like, the concerns for me as a Warriors fan are what's going on with the team and where the team can get to by the springtime, by April 15th when the playoffs start, or a week before if we're in the play-in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I'm a fan of Ja's. Like, I think, I like his competitiveness. I like that he speaks up. And, the first time I caught wind of it in my kind of Warriors universe was when he trash talked Andre Iguodala for not wanting to go to Memphis. Right. And that was something that I think, like, in the media, like, the whole situation with Iguodala was kind of misconstrued for, the narrative of it all. And that created, like, some, inkling of a rivalry before those teams even ever met in a game that mattered. So, I appreciate good trash talking, but to me, something like that, it's like,
right.
Okay, like that's like when your house is on fire and then like there's, 2 blocks away, there's like a flooding, you know what I mean? Like I have bigger concerns right now,
Yeah. Totally. Okay. So you mentioned narratives, and one of the things that we were sort of curious, maybe just to hear you jump in, is like, what are sort of the Golden State Warriors? What were the narratives maybe you're entering into season, or the national narratives even like now that you are paying attention to that frustrates you, that you sort of like following, or again, like to your point, or are you just not even really paying attention to some of those narratives as a fan and kind of the way you're thinking about things?
About the Warriors in particular, just the like, you know how it is when there's any problems with the team, it's like, okay, who's the problem, right? Like over the past couple of years, it's like I don't watch much ESPN or talking head stuff, or when there's like a Stephen A. Smith talking on like a clip on Twitter, I don't really watch that stuff because I know a lot of that stuff. Obviously, the guy knows basketball, but it's designed for clicks, for shares, for argumentative sakes, and that's why, like, honestly, not to hype up what we all do, but like that's why I like listen to a lot of basketball podcasts, because you get people who are like having these longer conversations where you can get nuance, where you can get insight, as opposed to these hot takes that like Skip Bayless and all those other folks do.
Yeah.
So for me, the ones that really bug me so far are that, the 2 timeline thing, right? I mean, there is truth to that, right? But it's like they're really forcing this thing that it's like it's all or nothing. And this was something that after they drafted Kuminga and Moses Moody in 2021, they were saying, they're going in on the 2 timeline thing. Well, you know what? That worked. Yes, you had some vets on the bench and whatnot, but all of a sudden there's some issues. Then it just got, and obviously the other thing is when Draymond punched Jordan Poole, that I did an episode the day that news came out, not the video, but I was like, oh, thank God there's no video, because once there's video, it's over. It's over. It becomes a huge distraction. It exists on the internet and you'll never be able to live it down. And then the next day, like, there's video. And I was like, oh, geez. So it's those kinds of things. And, when I take a step back and look at some of the other teams around the league and read some of their, every team's fans have complaints, right? And no one is just there yet. And yes, some teams are doing better than others, but the one thing that being witnessing this dynasty is like, it affords the Warriors, especially coming off a title, an ability to look at the season differently than at least when they weren't title contenders, right? It's like, it used to be like, we got to do everything to get to the playoffs. And now it's like, let's get to March, April healthy, in rhythm, and let's win 16 games. That's what it's always been about. So like all these losses, yes, the consistency is not there after like 33 games or something. But we'll let's see it play out. Right. And I think that for me, I've said that on my podcast and I've had a lot of people agree with me, but then a lot of people say like that I'm not really looking at the facts and the reality of it. But trust me, when it gets to January and they're still looking bad, then I'll start having some concerns, because you could look at, to me, it's always like December, right? But then once you flip the calendar, like that those few months look a lot shorter. So that's what I'll start looking at. Okay, do we make trades, or do we look for someone in the buyout market, stuff like that.
Yeah. So on that point, that's really interesting to hear, because for the most part, the Warriors content I get is from, I guess, national
The
media.
Oakland Warriors podcast. It's the Oakland Warriors pod.
Yeah, but like, so we listen to a lot of the Ringer stuff. We're pretty locked into that. Zach Lowe, Nate Duncan and his podcast. So that's usually where we are all getting our like Warriors content, right? Like it's really hard to watch the Grizzlies and all these other teams because like we don't do that for a living, obviously, right? So it's hard for us to just keep everything in order as far as like other teams. So kind of piggybacking off of that, like I feel like the two timeline thing has been like a huge discussion because it's like, who do we play? I know earlier in the season, like y'all starting lineup was like top 5 in net rating and y'all's bench was like really, really, really bad. And everyone contributed that to the young guys, right? Like Kuminga's just, is he even a player yet? Like Moses Moody, like what is he ever going to be? Wiseman, is this like, are we giving up on this yet? So regarding all of those topics, because I do feel like it is somewhat of a substantial comment too, right? Like that matters right now. Because if you look at Warriors in the past, like the guys y'all have had coming off the bench, like the Iggies, even the Gary Paytons. Who's the guy who killed us in the playoffs from 3? Y'all traded him to, or he went to
Otto Porter.
Otto Porter. Like y'all had those type
fucking
of like
murdered us.
Just veterans who knew what to do, knew y'all system could fit, just like molded into this like, you know, Warriors at large, the way that y'all play. And now you are starting to see like, we don't really have those guys anymore, and maybe our bench is sacrificing a little bit. So on that note, like, how do you feel about playing the young guys decently big minutes? How do you feel about kind of like having them, you know, play through their lumps, as Chris Vernon would say, versus, hey, let's maybe like sell on Wiseman and try to go get some decent veterans and like buy into this window that we have right now? Like, where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because the season went in with a lot of promise that, you know, they were going to be able to rest the guys because they had these young dudes who could, you know, play through their mistakes and whatnot. And then the punch happened, and then the season started really, really strangely, and they went on that 0-5 road trip, which just cut the legs out of that whole idea. And then all of a sudden, you really started having to chase some wins. And so like they couldn't play through the mistakes because like instead of losing those 5 games over the course of 20 games, they lost them all in like a week and a half. And so he pulled the plug on a lot of those ideas. And I think it's a concern. I'd said early on that let's see where this team is after 20 games, with the idea that not that they would be like where they need to be, but that you would get a better sense of who they actually are. And they started looking better. But here we are with Steph hurt, and they are 3 games as of this recording under 500. And you have to look at the standings. You have to make the playoffs first in order to get Steph, Clay, Draymond, you know, into the discussion. So, you know, that's a big debate, you know, like after the last couple of games against the Knicks and the Nets, where the Warriors didn't look good. But then in the Nets game, Wiseman dropped 30 and he looked better. You know, he looked fine. They got blown out by 30. So I think that, you know, when it comes down to it, like it's the big question mark, is the big question mark of the season. And, you know, I don't put it all on the young guys because the vets didn't come out the gate, you know, playing very well. Steph played well. Wiggins played well. They were both focused and didn't miss a beat from the playoffs. But everybody else, you know, kind of lollygagging. Clay had his issues. He seems better, but like his shot has been off. So when you lose guys like Gary Payton II and Otto Porter Jr. and even Nemanja Bjelica, who you know, who like was good for parts of the playoffs, and we always joke how he locked up Jason Tatum in the finals. For most of the regular season, you know, he wasn't getting playing time because he couldn't guard anybody. So there's a lot of revisionist history sometimes. But when you think about it, like Dante DiVincenzo, he's not Gary Payton in terms of athleticism, in terms of wingspan, but he does bring a better all-around game, and he's willing to be pesky. I like that. Like JaMychal Green, we had hoped that he would give a little bit what Otto Porter Jr. did, and right now I just don't see it. He's the big question mark in the rotation for me right now. And then, I also like to point out though that like Gary Payton II hasn't played a minute all year, and no knock on him, but I'm just stating facts to folks who say the Warriors screwed up. And then Otto Porter Jr. has played like just I think under 10 games and maybe 8. Yeah. So it's tough because they do need that veteran presence, and I think that's something that they need to figure out. Andre Iguodala is not playing; they're saving him for the spring. We'll see what that actually means. But at the end of the day, I hope they could pick somebody up, but I'm not exactly sure who that could be because off the bench, it's just Dante DiVincenzo. Who's still young, but he's like 26, has a really good pedigree from Villanova and the Bucks. So it's something that I think Bob Myers needs to look at. And when people were clamoring to trade Wiseman when he got sent down to the G League, it's like, you know what? Like that's way too early to trade anybody, first of all. Sure. And his value was at the lowest. And then also, it's like, this is the way it plays out. Trade deadline is February 9th, and you have to get him some reps in the G League. You have to bring him up, showcase him. Hey, he put up 30 points. I guarantee you there's somebody out there who is like, oh yeah, we could use that, Totally. And that team could also be, the Warriors. They could be like, oh wow, we could use that. So it's either if you're pro Wiseman, you're like, okay, cool. Maybe there's a way that he could fit. Or if you're anti-Wiseman, then you're like, oh, great, you should be happy. Then you might not get fleeced in a mid-season deal.
Sure. Got it. Sounds eerily similar to, a little different, but similar to our Dillon Brooks conversation. It's just like, all right, what do we do with this? Can I
ask about Dillon Brooks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go there.
Put a timer on us there.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny to me because I remember Dillon Brooks at Oregon, and I'm stunned that he was the most successful player off that team. Right, the Warriors had Jordan Bell for a hot minute, and that he flamed out. And Dillon Brooks, I liked him. I was rooting for him, but then all of a sudden, when did he become like Scowly Dillon Brooks? And is he a fan favorite or because I know his contract's up. So do you guys want to keep him, lose him? What's his deal?
How about let me take the fan favorite part first, just for perspective, because we're basically like
Patrick, you're also asking the wrong person about fan favorite right now.
That means I'm asking the right person.
Well, in the city of Memphis, it is a very controversial topic. I would say
for sure
most people that go to Grizz games or watch the games, it's a very accessible ticket in the city of Memphis, by the way, which is awesome, are you a Dillon guy or not? Like everybody else, there's no question. That's the only player that gets that topic. And it is I am of the heavy lean of not being a Dillon guy. Even though I fully respect the pieces that he adds as being very valuable. So I'm not going to – people that listen to our podcast know where I stand on this. It is whereas I would like to say the rest of my podcast brethren on the Grizz Den pod are more positive than I am when it comes to just that piece. And so I would just say that it is a big picture wise, before Ty goes into maybe sort of more of the Dillon Brooks history, maybe we can write a summary of that at some point and publish it. It really is I'll have people that I don't even really know go to games who they'll hear I do a podcast. Like, oh, that's cool. It's like, what do you think about Dillon? And it's it's the thing. No one's talking about Ja because they know he's awesome. Tripp is starting to maybe come into the second piece of that, Triple J, where it's like, man, do you think that he can really reach his potential? You're kind of starting to get that from some people, or at least I am from a casual fan. But for the most part, it's all, what do you think about Dillon? Where do you stand on Dillon?
Wait, on that note, can I just say, do you think, I know this is, Did you think his foul on Gary Payton II was dirty?
I would not. I thought it was a hard foul. I would not have said dirty.
I think it was really unfortunate the way he fell, and I think that was the problem. Like, if he falls any other way, no one's calling that play dirty, I don't think. But the fact that he fell the way that he did and he got injured, and I think is the reason. But what do you think?
I mean, I thought
that's a great question. I love that you asked that question.
Yeah, I mean, I thought like it was because the club into the head, and watching it full speed, it's something that, you know, people. I think the argument was like, oh, it was like full speed, like a bang bang.
Sure.
To me, it looked like he was, you know, going for it, or like going for making it look like he was like just. It was not completely incidental. He was trying to take him out, maybe not going for the head, but he was going up there. And to me, that's what makes it dirty. The landing is a landing, right? Like, no one can control how someone lands. So that's why I thought that was a dirty play. And obviously the suspension was because of the longer term injury and whatnot. So I did.
I think, you know, as someone who watches Dillon a lot, like you talked about, when did he become scowly? He's never been dirty. Like, he really hasn't. Like, he doesn't do dirty plays. And he will get in your face. He will bark. He will do it, like, everything. But if you know, like, if you watch him enough, it's crazy. He'll commit a hard foul and immediately help the guy up. Like, he's never been a dirty player. He really hasn't. That's why I think when, you know, Steve Kerr said he broke the code, which, as a Grizzlies fan, just going to be honest, was just, to me, the dumbest thing I've ever heard from Steve Kerr, a coach of Draymond Green, who knows how many handful of times he's broken the code. But anyway, I think that's why it was just like, Dillon's not that guy. Like, he's not, you know. And to your point, though, when you watch the play, especially as like a, you know, not even as a Grizzlies fan, just as any other fan of any team or any other sport, or just a casual watcher, I'd be like, oh, that's dirty. So I 100% get your point.
Yeah.
And I'll just say this on Dillon, on him. He just, you know, he sort of just like lacks athleticism. He's just a big-bodied, thick. I mean, he's in the NBA, so he's athletic. But in comparison to other like 3-and-D types, you know, like, I always like watch him. Like, man, this dude like could never play corner. Like, he can't move his hips. He like shoots off the wrong foot all the time, and now that's become like a good thing, when it really is just like he's just unathletic sometimes, and he just does things very in an odd way at times. And so I think that, you know, he got coached early on to make up for it with being very tough on the defensive end. He kind of got thrown into a Grizzlies team in his rookie year that had no identity, no offensive threats whatsoever. And all of a sudden, this second round pick kind of looks like something. He's all of a sudden Kobe, you know, and you know, he was kind of like the last pick of the former general management team before the team that's drafted Tripp, drafted Ja, drafted Bane, drafted all these guys. Dillon is the only holdover from at least from a draft perspective, of those people. And so he kind of, I don't know, he just kind of represents, to me, just represents like this old Grizz structure. And, but his role is very valuable if he will play in his role. That's basically my summary of Dillon. Ty, clean up whatever you need me to clean up, because sometimes I can be factually incorrect, but I think everything I said about Dillon is accurate.
I think that's a great point. I think the crazy thing to remember is, to Brantley's point, so Dillon is the longest tenured Grizzly. So as a Warriors fan, like, can you imagine your longest tenured player being 26 years old? Like, Klay's in his early 30s, Draymond's early 30s, Steph's mid 30s. Like, they've all been there for so long. And I think up to this point, to Brantley's another great point, is when Dillon got drafted, the Grizz were stepping out of a very productive era in the grit and grind. Dillon was like there right after that happened, but before anything else substantial had happened. So he was just kind of we were in limbo. We really didn't know what we were doing. We had no identity. Front office was just terrible. We really didn't know. So we put Dillon in a position to be like, all right, man, not only are you going to like defend the other team's best player, but like, you're going to create your own offense. You're going to try to create shots, because we don't have anyone else could do it, because Conley was hurt a ton towards the back end of his career. Mark was just kind of like fed up with it. He was like, Mark is such a strong, like,
I mean, he was traded that year, right?
Yeah, he was traded, or I think the next year. Yeah. But Mark just like, he wants to play with a certain type of player. And if you're not that guy, it's going to struggle. So I think that is a lot to do with.
Oh, wait,
Dillon.
maybe we did. Maybe I may be wrong, but
it's
I feel
like, it's like teaching a toddler bad habits. And then all of a sudden when they're 6, you expect them to just not do it anymore. You know what I mean? So I think he's in it's just been tough for him, trying to give him a little bit of credit to just completely change what he was always taught to do. And at Oregon, even to your point, like that guy was like a shot creator, like for better or for worse. And they made a big run. Yep. Like he's been decently successful doing it. It's kind of like the old saying of like, if you're not extremely confident, they wouldn't be in the league. You hear like people say that, like, well, if he wasn't wired that way, would he be here in the first place? You know what I mean? I think Dillon is like a prime example of that. Like if he wasn't wired the way that he was, he probably wouldn't be in the NBA, much less starting on a team that's tied for first in the West, Yeah.
Right,
so the tricky thing about like what to do with him, I hope that wasn't too long-winded. What to do with him, Patrick, is like that is honestly the forefront of all Grizzlies fans, and I'm guessing the forefront of the Grizzlies front office. To your point, his contract is up. He's on a very team-friendly deal right now. Like I'm pretty sure he's getting $11 million this year, which is like an absolute steal. This summer, and that's also why he hasn't signed an extension, because he's going to turn that down so he can get more money, right? Like if we sign him to an extension now, he would only be able to get, I think, a 30% raise or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's going to be looking for $20 million a year, probably like maybe more. I don't know. The Grizzlies have to decide, is this a guy? Is this a starting 3 positionally? Is this a starting wing that we can win a championship with? Because I think we are starting to enter in that phase. I love how you have one of the questions. Hopefully we'll get to it later. Are the Grizzlies true contenders right now? To be determined. I think that's a great question. And personally, honestly, I'm not sure. But if you look,
let's hold off on that. Let's hold off on that question.
Yeah. If you got to remember, like Ja's 23, Jaren's 23, Dez is 24. Like these guys are crazy young, like very, very basically beginning their NBA journey, right? Like, for instance, Steph didn't make an All-Star game till he was 25, right? Clay didn't make an All-Star game till he was 25 too, I think. Draymond the same. Like, they're all like 2 or 3 years younger than even that. But everyone's also said, like, our window is opening now. And the thing with Dillon is, like, is he a guy that we know that if we sign him to that deal, can we win big? Not just can we succeed in the regular season, be a second round of the playoff team. Like, can we truly win a title if he's our starting 3 guard? I think we're going to have to make that decision, because once you sign him to that lucrative deal, like, he's yours. Yes, you can trade him if, something doesn't go right, but still, like, you sign him for him to be, you don't sign him to trade him, obviously. So I think that's a really interesting topic of, can we do that moving forward 2 years from now, 3 years from now, right? When he's 28, 29 years old, like, can we win with him? And I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you.
Patrick, I'm curious. I'd love to kind of start jumping into getting into like our Christmas game preview a little bit, just going into some detail, just really quickly off the top. Like, what was just your reaction when you saw that it was, because it was probably a foregone conclusion the Warriors were going to play Christmas Day, just really what time slot. What was your reaction when you saw that it was against the Grizzlies?
I was excited. There was so much. I mean, that was the series in the playoffs that worried me the most, honestly. And I will fully admit, like, a few years ago, I thought, Ja was not going to be this good. I thought he was too small, too skinny. We'd seen so many dudes who were athletic. And I do have concerns that with as high as he gets up and as thin as he is, that one day he'll, like, I don't want to put it out there, but just, something, he'll be hurt for a while, right?
My prayer circle just received that, and, we'll take that in. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then that year that the Grizz beat the Warriors in the play-in, just a couple seasons ago,
2020.
Yeah. Like I was like, okay, I was surprised that the Grizzlies were that good. And then, by the time we got to the playoffs last season, y'all made me nervous. You know what I mean? Because like what you guys had was bravado, which is what you need to beat a team like the Warriors. You need youth, fearlessness that comes with youth, and size and athleticism. You guys had like a lot of those things. And it took it was a battle. It took the Warriors to pull out everything that they had from their championship past, like what's in their experience. So, it was pretty obvious to me that it would be a game. Like it wasn't going to be the Warriors Mavericks. Like that didn't feel like anything,
Sure.
No disrespect to the Mavericks as a team, but like, it's the Grizzlies where it made the most sense. In the past, the Warriors had played like the Cavs on, during that LeBron era. But, Warriors Celtics to me doesn't even make sense on Christmas. So,
right.
I said earlier to you, I was excited for it. And now I'm actually just looking at this game and I want to see, this is what's happened since Steph went out. When Steph went out with his shoulder, I think I said on an episode on my podcast, I was like, you know what? Embrace the fact that it's going to be ugly for a while, that there's going to be some L's that pile up, but you have to look at the games within the game and see progress and get through that tunnel. And when Steph gets back and Wiggins gets back and, 2023 rolls around, that guys like Dante DiVincenzo have continued to get build more chemistry with his team, that Jonathan Kuminga continues to play, like react rather than think on the court. And he's been doing a great job of that for the past month. That maybe Moses Moody can get ahead of two-way guys and get into the rotation, that James Wiseman can get out of the G League and show that he can play defense. We know he can score. The thing is, like, can he play defense? Can he rebound? And that, does he have enough dog in him? You know what I mean? I've been saying that since he got drafted. That was my biggest question his rookie year. And sometimes I think he has it. Sometimes I'm not exactly sure, but the tools are there. So not to, kind of downplay the game at all, but those are the things I'm looking for going in and watching how they play a team like the Grizzlies, who are, I'm assuming, coming in for blood. You know what I mean? No one feels sorry for the Warriors. No one's going to be like, oh, shucks, But I was like joking around with somebody. I was like, when Ja comes in at Chase Center and he's looking for Steph and Clay, and instead he sees Ryan Rollins and Ty Jerome, is he going to be like, do I need glasses? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that Steph? Did he shave?
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to a good game. And the thing is, like, I've always wanted to see, maybe it's because they both had meniscus tears, but I always wanted to see, as you call him, Triple J and Wiseman. Obviously, like, Wiseman is not there to get minutes against him in a fair way. But that's always been a matchup that maybe further down the road I would look forward to in general. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Unless it's like, for me, like a 30-point blowout. But, that's the thing. 30-point blowouts for this Warriors team. I used to say last season, the best games, my favorite games, were the vet rest games on the back-to-backs on the road, where the vets sit and they let the young guys run free. And those haven't been as fun this year, of course, but that's what you're looking for, because I'm a big fan of homegrown talent. And I think most real fans are, unless you're a Lakers fan, you just want to buy talent. But like, that's what they rely on, like the free agency, right? It's like, we want stars to come play in front of our stars, right? So, you want to see those guys grow, and that's what makes that fun. And I would watch a 30-point blowout. I'm not hoping for it, and I'm not like selling out my team or anything, but they've had a couple of those recently. But I would watch those to see how they compete, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for how these guys compete when you're getting your tail whooped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's always something to look for, even, at least for me, in a game against the Grizzlies. And I'm not conceding it, but what I hope for is that the Warriors can rise up and find some of that they found against the Celtics. And they don't have Steph.
Yeah.
They might have Wiggins, but Wiggins, he'll obviously be a little bit rusty, maybe a little bit out of condition. But if they can summon some of that competitiveness, if Klay can have a good game at home, I mean, they live and die right now with Klay and Jordan Poole, with Steph and Andrew Wiggins out. And it just so happens that Klay and Jordan Poole have been the Warriors' two most inconsistent players. So, that's what you just want to see, people kind of get their games right, regardless, and compete. You just want to see competition at the highest level. So,
yeah. So that was going to be even one of my questions. Just on a quick note, is should Grizz fans expect to see everybody but Steph, essentially, you think, Christmas Day?
Yeah, JaMychal Green, I think, is health and safety protocols. I don't know anymore how long that lasts.
Okay.
And
former Grizz, by the way, do you know that?
Yeah, absolutely. He was on the losing end of a lot of Warriors games, not just Grizzlies, but like on the Nuggets last season, and I believe with the Clippers for a while. So, but he'll be out. He might be out, and then Dante DiVincenzo, he's sick. They haven't said what it is. It's not COVID, but those are the dudes. Andrew Wiggins hopefully is coming back. If they don't have those guys, then you're basically out, 1, 2, 3, like 4 of your top 8, Right. So, then you get introduced to Ryan Rollins. But,
good to know. That's what we're here for, is discuss those types of things that could be up and coming for sure. Ty, I guess one of the things that you were starting to mention, I think a question that Ty had written down was, for a Grizz fan perspective, like a narrative that's not talked about on a national level at all, and so we're not necessarily clamoring for it, but it just never really gets discussed. It's sort of just like the homegrown strategy that the Grizz is doing, that is sort of mimicking Warriors' growth until they got to championship aspirations, were able to take advantage of the KD thing, won some more afterwards, obviously, when he was gone. So I think one of the things that we were wanting to ask you is, like, do you sort of even like see from a fan perspective like some similarities between the franchises when you're sort of watching them, kind of, because it was all one of those things with the Warriors was like they were kind of up and coming, and then they were here, and they're here to stay because this like talent was just there. And I think that's one thing where Grizz fans are like, do we have that? Do we have kind of like this different talent base where we have a core of people that we built together, where all of a sudden it's like we might just get here and now we're here for a period of time? Curious your perspective on that.
Yeah. Do you remember during the playoff series between the Grizz and Warriors, somebody asked Klay Thompson if he saw any similarities, and I think he deferred and basically, I don't know verbatim, but he said no.
Right.
I thought that was just, competition and stuff, but I have always seen in the last, I guess maybe since the play-in loss, the Warriors play-in loss to you guys, I've seen similarities, because here's the thing. You guys have one transcendent talent right now. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what the Warriors had that made everything else work. And I see similarities in the way, here's the funny thing, right? Like, it's the similarities between Ja and Steph to me are that they're kind of unstoppable, but like one does it one way and the other does it another way, right? Like, sure, Ja's better from 3, but like it's always been about his athleticism, his getting to the basket, everything, just putting pressure on the rim. And Steph did it starting 2009 from the outside, right? The thing that always made him so different and dangerous was his ability to, I mean, he was never, right? He's not the quickest guy, but I remember his rookie year, a replay of him kind of like dribbling to the 3-point line and somebody guarding him kind of like turning the ball over in his hand as if he was going to shoot, the person jumping at that, and then him just running right by. I'd never really seen that too many times from the 3-point line back then, where just someone, when they looked like they were about to shoot, because his ability to go off the bounce is what made him really, really special. I mean, just a great shot maker, greatest shooter of all time. And his hand-eye coordination is unmatched, and his conditioning. But I think that's what made him different. And I think like with Ja, you guys have that. It's just a different type of guy. So, you know, I look at a Desmond Bane, and, you know, like there's an analogous pair to like Klay Thompson to me in that respect, right? A guy that, like, would he have been, no disrespect to Klay, but like when he was coming out of college, I didn't expect him to be what he was. But like, you know, we all know that Steph helped make these guys as great as they are. Steph is the system. And, you know, I don't watch enough Grizzlies games, but, you know, does Desmond Bane do this? Does he get the opportunity like this elsewhere? Maybe, maybe not, you know? And then you guys also have like you guys have drafted pretty well. I wanted Zaire Williams. I can't believe you guys like took him at 10. I was like, oh man, we're going to grab him at 14.
We couldn't either.
Yeah, we couldn't either.
Okay, are you guys happy with him? Because I haven't followed him. Is he having a sophomore slump?
Still out.
Okay.
So the word around, I'll go real quick. The word around draft is that we were trying to get to 10 to then move up to like 7 or 8. And apparently we really wanted Wagner and Giddey were our two big targets. And then both we couldn't get from 10. We couldn't get any higher. And so we were kind of at 10 being like, well, we're going with Zaire here. That was, you know, that may be completely false. The front office might have had their eyes on Z the whole time, but that was kind of the Memphis fan narrative at that time.
Yeah. And also, like, maybe Warriors fans don't know this, but Tayshaun Prince is in our front office on the GM side of things, and Zaire was that was Tayshaun's guy. And so he was like, I vouch for him. He's evidently grown like another inch or two. If you sort of pay attention to him, watch. He's basically Jaren's height. He's maybe like half an inch shorter. He's grown.
It's wild.
He started. This will be interesting, you know, for Warriors folks. He has only been playing. He's had like 5 games, maybe. He's sat out this entire first half of the year with like what they were calling tendonitis. That some are speculating on the Grizz side that was basically growth pains in his knee. Because he's very clearly grown at least another inch and a half. And so he needs to put some weight on. He's going to he'll have like a significant amount of rust to him. He has not had a great game yet, having come back. He's looking aggressive. They're clearly, you know, Taylor Jenkins, you know, loves to give everybody the green light, no exception to a player just coming back. So I'm sort of like, I'm high on him. I think his body type and role has a huge fit on the team. Now, if he were, he's on my like tradable list right now. Like if someone were to say he needs to be in like a OG trade or something like that, if we happen to actually go make a trade, which we're never going to, that's just not what we do. Or I'd be shocked if we did. Like, he's not someone that I would like cry about. But
I'll give you Moses Moody.
Yeah. I mean, Moses was someone that we were all like pre-draft, like really high on him because he from Arkansas, close by.
Yeah.
Like we're in SEC country. We watched a lot of his games. Like a lot of people were super high on him. So it's like been super interesting just watching his development with you guys. And like I still sort of kind of want some stock in him, honestly, just based on some of the games that I've watched him play.
I mean, he'll be good. I mean, he got a start against the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals and did just fine. So like that's another thing him going through. But one more thing, just on the similarities, it's like, you know, the thing about Steph and Ja, it's like, you know, Steph is an all-time player. Obviously, Ja's young; he's not there yet. Can he be, right? And it's a question of like the ankle injuries got Steph early, but then he overcame them. Can Ja stay healthy? Can the Memphis team, the organization, keep those guys together? And you know, it's like, can Jaren Jackson Jr. He's obviously, you know, came out as a higher more highly touted prospect than, you know, a Draymond Green, if you just want to look at like,
right.
you know, three dudes, or like a team's core. Can he, like, how high can he go in terms of that? But, you know, the pieces are there. It's just a question of like, right. It's like, it's either like you turn out like, you know, you could either be like the Warriors or you could be like the Thunder, right? Like the Thunder with James Harden and Russ, right? I'm sure you guys have thought about that a lot too.
Yes.
So it's
too often.
It doesn't come easily, and that's something that Warriors fans who are nervous about, quote unquote, wasting a year of Steph's prime think about, because it's not easy, and it's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
And when you don't have Steph, you're like, you know, good players in the league are just good players, right? Steph is, sometimes you catch yourself taking him for granted, the shots he makes and the gravity and just everything about when he's on the court. So, you know,
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm going to miss. Go ahead, Ty. Sorry.
I was just going to say that, like, even outside of, so John Kraft, another guy on our podcast, he's like the culture king. Like, he's just obsessed with culture. Like, he just think that it tops everything. And he's always kind of tried to pin us as like the new Spurs, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Which honestly is very similar to, like, I guess you could say old Warriors, but also like current Warriors. Mm-hmm. So you draft your three guys, right? Not in the same year, but you draft Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And like you said, you keep them together. Yes, they fit really well on the court, but also it really feels like Steph is just the most bought in athlete of any like specific team I think I've ever seen. Like, he is such a warrior and will always be a warrior, and everything done, every move that is made, everything the franchise organization does, like, almost has him in mind. And when you have a player like that, so again, with the Spurs, it's like the Duncan thing, right? Like, Tim Duncan is our staple. He will be here as long as the Memphis Grizzlies are in Memphis, or Ja being in Memphis. So him with the Spurs, right? Like, if you look at Steph will be like the face of the Warriors for the rest of his life, right? Regardless of who comes after, it's Steph. It will always be Steph. So I think even like besides player comps, it's like organizational comps too, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have our guy, everything we've done, Brantley would probably agree, it's with like Ja in mind, right? Like, how do we prop him up? What do we need to give him to get him to be his most successful? We got him a coach that is like very in tune with him, which I think is really cool. Very similar to Steph and Kerr, right? Obviously Duncan and Pop too. Mm-hmm. But also like the way that y'all, I don't know if like slow playing it is the right word, because y'all just like kind of let things develop back in the day, right? Like, when he first got drafted, y'all didn't make like any flashy moves to be like, oh, we need this, Steph isn't going to do it, or whatever that looks like. Or like maybe Steph, like you said, the ankle problems. So I think that's where we really see the comparison is more so like 30,000 foot view level, right? Not necessarily even on the court. It's more like, gosh, what they have done is like exactly what we want to try to do. Like, we have our Steph and Ja, we have our Clay and Bane, we have our Draymond and Jaren. Yes, they're completely different players. I get that. But if you look at like what we were doing with them, we are trying to let them grow. Like, Bane played point guard in summer league after his rookie year. Why? To solely set him up to be the secondary ball handler, to do more next to Ja. Like, all that was for a reason. Mm-hmm. And you can see the wheels in motion. And I feel like the Warriors were so similar. Like, when y'all had so many tough run-ins in the playoffs, like the playoffs against the Clippers, the playoffs against the Spurs, and you could easily be like, oh, they need this piece, let's go get it. Oh, they need this guy, so let's go get it. Y'all didn't do that. Y'all just continue to build and build and build and build, and let what you have continue to grow and establish. And to Brantley's great point, it just kind of like, there you were. And then once you have your guys, like, well, this is just it. Here we are for the rest of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, you talk about the Grizz see themselves as the new Spurs. The Warriors are trying to see themselves as the new Spurs. You know, I've talked about how like, you know, the three guys, right? Like, Steph is the culture guy. He's like the center, the Duncan, and whatever, if you want to call Clay, Manu, and then Tony Parker and Draymond, whatever, like that, they're there. And yeah, I think that's a really good point because, when you have that one guy, you have to just take advantage of it, right? And not every organization knows to do it, and not every organization that even knows it is willing to do it. And I'm not super familiar, but I have heard about, the Grizzlies organization and that they're pretty solid. So to me, I could definitely see that. And, with the Warriors, it's like when Steph got into the league, everything was kind of like, oh, wow, his game's translating to the NBA. That stuff he did at Davidson in the NCAA tournament, he can do here. And then the ankle stuff. And then they moved on from Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr. And, there were some moves that they didn't make, thank God. There was the one where Kerr, before he signed, when he signed with the Warriors in 2014 in the summer, thankfully, I always mention this every now and then, like Stan Van Gundy was up for that job and he wanted to be like GM or have a front office title too. And I was like, no, dodge that bullet. And so they didn't give it to him. He didn't want the job. He went to Detroit, traded for Blake Griffin, blew that up. The fans were dealing with it until a couple of good drafts. But then the Warriors got Steve Kerr because he didn't want to play or to coach for the Knicks. But there was a trade on the table. Man. There was a trade on the table that was discussed, which you may or may not know about, was like some version of with the Timberwolves for Klay Thompson, Draymond, and either like David Lee or Harrison Barnes, some combination, 3-person combination of those dudes to Minnesota for Kevin Love, right? And that was not anything I wanted to do. And luckily, Jerry West was still with the Warriors, and he said he didn't want to trade Klay. He didn't want to do it, so they didn't do it. And just as an aside, I always got to laugh at how much the Timberwolves have helped the Warriors build who they are because they passed on Steph twice.
That's right.
They passed on Steph twice. I guess the Warriors pulled out of that trade. And then, of course, most recently, they gave us Andrew Wiggins, who was understandably like needed a change of scenery. But they gave us the pick that became Kuminga, who's actually playing really, really well right now. For D'Angelo Russell, a guy that they sat in the playoffs last season against y'all.
Couldn't play. Yeah.
They couldn't get there in the clutch. And also like they didn't extend him, and he has no contract for next year. So thank you, Timberwolves fans. I know they're paying from making bad deals from way back in the day as a Warriors fan, but I just have to say, Merry Christmas.
Talk to me a little bit of something that you just mentioned. Like, so Grizz fans will remember, like, Kuminga struggled in our series with you guys last year. Yeah. You just mentioned that he's been looking better. What have you liked from what you've been seeing from him? What should we sort of expect, maybe see from changes from him from what we've last played y'all?
Yeah, so Kuminga, he was still the youngest guy, I think, on the Warriors, maybe like second youngest now. And he gives the Warriors a level of athleticism that I wanted to see against the Grizzlies, because when played in the play-in, he wasn't there. And what he tried to do over the summer was, in summer league stuff, he was on ball a lot more, trying to do some, I'm sure they were telling him to handle, because the Warriors have a lot of wings that handle, and point forward stuff. And it was mixed results in the summertime, right? Like his handle isn't super tight. He needs to bring a little bit closer to his body, a little bit lower to the ground, gets a little craftier with it, kind of just dribbles like up and down instead of left and right, And and at the beginning of the season, it was weird because a lot of us thought that he had the highest ceiling out of the 3 lottery picks the Warriors had. And he didn't start, but like he was in the rotation the first game of the season, and then he was out by the third game. So we just didn't know where he would fit. And then when the 0-5 road trip happened, Kerr started putting him in more. And then at a certain point, you could just tell that something clicked for him. The Warriors system is, a little bit more complex than some other systems. I don't know what every team runs, but it's a lot of read and react, and wings have particular roles. So when you get in there, there's a lot of thinking going on. And what I noticed specifically in the Dallas Mavericks game, maybe 3 weeks back, was he was just reacting and he was just doing things. And last season, he got a lot of his stuff off of cuts, backdoor, slipping screens, stuff like that, And I think earlier in the season, he was trying to show more of what he can do. But then I think he's learned to kind of take a step back, do the things he's really good at, and then add some more of what he can do on top of that. So some of that is less successful and, leads to more turnovers. So he doesn't do it as often. But you can tell when a guy is thinking the game. James Wiseman thinks the game, right? And that's probably obvious because he's only played 55 NBA games in his life and 3 college games. But Jonathan Kuminga is just reacting. He'll make a ton of mistakes, sure, but not like he's trying to win instead of trying to avoid mistakes. And I've seen moments where he is vocal and where he can lead. And at 20, I find that pretty promising. So, and he's also, you guys know about athletic dudes on your team, but Kuminga is one of the more athletic dudes. He looks like he's hitting the rim almost every time with his head. Yeah, he's like a explosively quick jumper. He'll get to the rim. Klay Thompson can get to the rim, right? But that's like molasses, right? But like Klay Thompson just looks like a tall guy jumping. But like whereas Kuminga, he just gets there faster. Like that dunk he had on Jason Tatum in the Celtics game. Obviously, it wasn't like 1, 2, 3 jump everybody, but you could just see that explosion there. So I expect that, to me, he's in the rotation. Kurt talked about how at the beginning of the season, there were like the foundational 6 or something. And I guess that's the starters plus Jordan Poole. I think by the end of this season, it'll be at least, it'll be 7. I think he's definitely in the mix. And you hear talk about, like, oh, he's in trade talks. It's like, it would have to take something huge to trade him because he is, what are you going to get back for him that is going to be that much better, right? So yeah, cool. He's good. There's Warriors fans who are out on him too, though. Like he stinks. Like they want to see I don't know, a young whatever. Like people demand so much of these dudes in their second season, right? Like somebody posted an article of people complaining about criticizing Scotty Barnes, and I haven't followed him very much, but like I get it.
He's
like
21.
People expect everybody to be Luka in their second year or whatever, or
sure.
like Ja. Like Ja was pretty good in second year, right? It's like, pump the brakes. That's it,
right?
For sure.
Well, all right.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, really, we're coming up on an hour. Patrick, I'm gonna let you rapid fire us really quickly, and we can do any like closing questions, but want to rapid fire some stuff because you sent us some questions too. Wanted to let us answer any of your questions from a Grizz POV.
Yeah. It's fun. Okay, what's your who's your best comp for Ja now or even in the past?
So is this mainly like the way he plays, like his game?
Yeah, on the court.
Okay, man. So this has been talked about before. So this isn't like an original thought, but I don't know. Imagine Allen Iverson was just like way more athleticism and less of a jumper. The reason that has kind of been comped before is undersized, like heart of a lion, just wants to go at your throat every time he steps on the floor. And those, I guess, primarily being the same thing. And I guess the other one is like a way more high IQ version of Westbrook. Just like with his crazy athleticism and the way he can get to the rim. We have a guy on our podcast that I think he tried to blend Allen Iverson and Steve Nash into one player, and that would be Ja. The way that Steve Nash could read the game and just make every decision, know what's coming out of every pick and roll, reading coverages, but also has like just the crazy finishes around the rim, the cutthroatness of AI, and just wants to kill you every time you're on the floor. I mean, that would be like one of the greatest players in NBA history if you combine those two guys. So a caveat there.
Yeah.
But I can see where that would come from. I can see where that comes from.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, I've always sort of just said he just reminds me of this more athletic Steve Nash. I don't think that I did the hybrid, of AI into Nash thing. I didn't honestly watch a lot of AI, but I loved Steve Nash. He's our other host, Will Walker's favorite player of all time. And because I think when you watch a lot of Ja, eventually, this sounds stupid, but the athleticism part, you kind of get numb to it because it just happens so frequently. It's like Steph, he just crushes threes all the time. You're just, oh, this is just what Steph does. That's kind of the athleticism part of Ja, but the way he reads games and has the ability to put people kind of on his back in that prison type scenario, find different types of ways to get into the paint and find different people, and also just sort of change the way that he's able to finish at the rim. Just kind of, it's creative like Nash. It's nowhere like the similar style, but Nash was just so creative in what he did that's to me what makes Ja special. It's his creativity on the court coupled with his obviously tremendous athleticism.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that from my outside of I'm not in your guys' fan base, so that's interesting. But real quick, you didn't. I always say D Rose. Is that not one you guys talk about? Obviously pre ACL.
Right.
I think the finishing and the athleticism are on the rim. I just and maybe this is my homerism showing, but I think Ja is already better than the best D Rose. I think Josh is better than that, but he's better than potentially Westbrook too.
I think so.
But I think I do get that for sure with the athleticism, essentially lack of a jumper early in the career. But I didn't think, back to Brantley's point, I didn't really see D Rose as creative. He was just a bull just rushing to the rim and get out of the way or you're going to get dunked on. And yes, Ja has that to him too. But in the pick and roll, for instance, Ja orchestrates everything. I don't remember that was a 2 or 3 year window when he was really good, but I don't really remember that happening as much.
That's interesting.
That's where the disconnect comes from.
That's interesting because as a non-Grizzlies watcher, the Steve Nash stuff I find interesting because I think that's an underrated thing about Ja Morant is his smarts and we see the explosiveness, but his ability to be a real point guard, a team point guard, which is why I think he's already better. I've never been a Westbrook fan because for all obvious reasons. So I find that interesting.
And that's an interesting point too, is because I remember when Draymond got interviewed not too long ago, and he was asked who do you go up against that you just know is basically going to be a chess match. And Ja was the person he named, which was crazy. And it was I think maybe last year or the year before. So it wasn't even that recent. And he was when you go against Ja, he has the next moves. He's going to try to pick you apart, and he's really smart, and he kind of knows he can read things, and he can kind of he can trick you, and he can, he can outthink you sometimes too. And I thought that was because Draymond's IQ, is apparently through the roof. So it's really cool to hear a guy like Draymond say that about Ja, which I thought was cool.
Yeah. Next question. Is there anyone in the league you would trade Ja Morant for straight up?
No.
Okay.
Simple answer. Just no.
Julius Randle. No, just kidding.
Oh, hell yeah. Totally.
It's not a player on our team I would trade straight up for Julius Randle.
Okay, we did this. We asked this question to each other last year. We did a overreaction podcast to the Bill Simmons like trade value list, and I was the only one who was like, I would say yes to Giannis, and I would really, really, really think super hard because of longevity with Doncic. I think that I would like to say that I would change my answer with that one, but the longevity thing with Ja still makes me cringe. It's really hard to think about, and I think you I think you have to think about Tatum now, in terms of like straight up, like now the culture fit with Memphis. I'm removing all of that, like it's just pure basketball player wise. But there's no NBA star right now that understands. That could, I think, fit and jive with the city of Memphis so well, like Ja does. He's from the South. There's all these like perfect alignment things in the NBA cosmosphere that just fits perfectly with the city of Memphis. And so that was probably why my answer would really be no. If you're just like doing basketball, my long-winded answer, I think I'd still have to say Giannis and Tatum right now. Sorry.
Interesting. If again, not as a Grizzlies fan, but I would think Giannis and Luka. I'm not a Tatum guy. I don't think he's that guy. He could be. He's young, but I just don't think he's that guy.
Yeah.
I think Ja Morant's proven he's that guy. But anyway, next one is okay.
Love that question though.
Yeah. So, all right, this is a Warriors-based question. So, of course, James Wiseman is from Tennessee. I got to ask y'all, and you may say no, do you remember anything about him in high school or in his like 3 games at Memphis?
Okay, so in all transparency, we had to go to sort of like the scuttlebutt refresh, if you will. And Memphis is a small town. When you put that question on the list, I was sort of just like, dudes, what do y'all kind of remember was happening around this? Because I don't go to Memphis Tigers games, and the kind of commentary was just he's a great rim runner, great playmaker out of high school, always sort of struggle with decision making. But the thing that I think that will be interesting, I think, to Warriors fans is that the rumor was that during his time with the university versus playing here in high school was that while he was suspended, there was all the NCAA stuff. The speculation was that he would not take to Penny's coaching well. And so that was, even though Penny and him still seem to have a public positive relationship together, people within the city sort of thought that Wiseman sort of leaving or, declaring for the NBA, and on top of the NCAA piece of everything, that there was that the coaching piece of it was an issue. Coupled with the fact that he was, just more athletic, struggle with decision making. And honestly, those things together could be an interesting little tale of a little bit of obviously what's happening with that asset for you guys.
Yeah. Do you guys think he's a bust?
I wouldn't go there. I think Wiseman to me feels like going from a big fish in a little pond to a maybe little fish in a big pond. Like if you look at his, I didn't watch him a ton in high school. Obviously, he played 3 games at Memphis, but the stuff I did watch was like, the little blurps they would do at the draft and stuff like that. He looked like he would just catch the ball, turn around and dunk, and then jog down the floor, and then basically do the same thing just every time down the floor. And as you mentioned, like I remember watching him rookie year, like he showed flashes of like maybe like dribbling up into like an 18-foot jumper and like nailing it. I just think like the next level stuff, right? Because like everyone's in the NBA is talented. He has elite size and elite athleticism for that size, but like does he get everything else? And I think to be like a great player, to live up to your number 2 overall draft pick, like you got to do all the little stuff too. Like you got to know the moment. You got to be like unafraid, like you were talking about earlier. Like he hasn't shown that ability, right? Just like that dog in him, like that mentality. Like to be really great, I think you have to have that. So I'm not going to call him a bust because I think he could easily. I mean, if you just look at like what DeAndre Jordan did for the Clippers, even though Golden State's offense is clearly completely different, all the Clippers did was just run hot pick and roll with Chris Paul and either DeAndre or Blake, and y'all just don't do that. So it could be even a system thing, right? Like if you look at Wiggins, getting him in a different system where he's asked to do different things. Like if you did that with Wiseman, who knows? So I'm not going to call him a bust because he's still so young. But yeah, it looks like a fit problem to me.
From an outsider perspective, it also to me is just like, man, it's so crazy that y'all haven't figured out how to make him work. If he's really this talented, I sort of just feel like the Warriors are the type of franchise and culture that are going to figure out how to make that guy a thing.
For sure.
And so that's where I'm kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready to say bust, but I'm willing to sell for whatever I could get for him. If I were a fan of the Warriors, that's the way I'd be thinking, because it's like you guys have done well, maybe not in the previous period of time you haven't had to rely on young people, but you clearly know how to get people who are willing to adapt their mindset to fit into a role that can help you win a championship. And if it's either his talent or his mindset that's not matching, and either way, that clearly is a reason that it's weird. And for a young guy like that, he's in like the best position possible. He should want to adjust his mindset. He's playing with like all-time greats. He could really, contribute to a ring. It's just weird.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a star-crossed early part of his career. I mean, the 3 games at Memphis, and I think only one of those games was against a reasonable team. And then, everything stops in 2020 with the pandemic, and then beginning of his rookie year, he gets COVID for a couple weeks, doesn't train in like a 2-week training camp, and then every time he was getting good, he got hurt like a tweak, and then he tore his meniscus, so he hasn't played. And I think that's something that is tough because there's not much material on him from before he got drafted. Right. And there's really varying material on him since he got drafted. I can't blame Warriors fans for being frustrated with him. I get frustrated with him. When he went to the G League and I watched the G League game, I was like, dude, he should be mashing on these people, but he's kind of passive. So, but I think he can get there, and it's really, really like, but the other thing too is like with the Warriors, it is like I was saying earlier, you have to like know and react and do something quickly. And not only has he not had enough reps with like the vets and the Hall of Famers, but he hasn't had enough reps on the NBA court. Yeah. And, I laughed last season when Kuminga and Moody both passed him. He sat out all last season, but sometime in January, they passed him in number of games played. So I think that I don't think he's a bust. I think you can literally definitely see the talent. Like if you put him on a team, like honestly, I don't know, like Detroit or something, he'd be pretty good. I'd trade him for Isaiah Stewart personally. Like, last things, I don't want to take up too much more time, but like,
that's perfect.
What is, just randomly, what is something that Warriors fans should be looking for from the Grizzlies coming to Chase Center on Christmas? I'm assuming that they're hunting season.
Yeah.
I think I think our eyes light up. Speaking of like Grizzlies players, like I think Ja's eyes light up when he sees the Warriors logo. I think he's like, okay, let's go. That's what I loved about our playoff series, that back and forth when y'all beat us game 1. Steph was like, let's go. Like walked up to Ja after the game. We beat y'all game 2. Ja immediately walks up to Steph and was like, we here, let's go. Like I love that they, I think like each other enough and are like very respectful towards each other, but also both of them are wired just like you talked about dogs. Like Steph and Ja are both just dogs. Like they're going to go at each other constantly. I love that matchup. I hate that Steph's not playing. I think Ja's been asked like who does he love to play against the most, and I think he said Steph. So I think, and honestly, I wanted to get to this question at some point, but I really do think the Grizzlies view the Warriors as like kind of a rival of ours. The Warriors, I don't know if y'all that's reciprocal or not. I guess
I would say
from the playoffs,
I would say in the West.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say in the West, like that. I mean, for me, like that's the team in the summertime that if the Clippers aren't much better, if the Clippers don't,
sure,
yeah,
I look at the Grizzlies. Like I told you, they were the team that I worried most about at any point in the playoffs last year.
So I think Christmas Day, and hopefully we'll have Bane back. So I think we will try to. I think you will see a lot of effort. I think if y'all are down, guys, I could see us trying to make a statement, and it may go horribly wrong. But I could see us trying to put everything together for one night, and see what happens. But
I think there's a couple of things. We were sort of talking about our top three or whatever haven't played on the court. Potentially it could be Christmas Day as their first time. The other thing that we're also playing a rookie and a new face significant minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Santi Aldama at the stretch four, who's replaced Kyle Anderson. David Roddy, who, unbeknownst to me, is still getting tons of minutes. He's starting to look a little bit better. He's kind of a bully type player. But I think that Warriors fans, if he doesn't get into foul trouble, I think they should expect to see a different Jaren Jackson Jr. on the offensive side of the ball. He just is. He's going to look. I like to say he just is now a man. Like he just has filled out. He looks like he now understands how big he is from a length perspective, and he doesn't just look kind of like gangly, arms just flailing everywhere. I mean, that still happens because he's so freaking huge. But there are moments, and he had a couple big games against you guys in our series, but he just is starting to look a little bit more dominant in the paint. That I would expect if he were to have a decent game, you'll be like, I don't know if he did that against us last year. I mean, he definitely had moments from behind the arc and had some great defensive moments, but he just looks a little bit stronger from a pure looks perspective, but also just the way he's playing. And if he's not in foul trouble, that he really is sort of this linchpin of the entire ecosystem of the Grizzlies, from a defensive angle, protecting us obviously at the rim, but then also just giving us some strength, length, and some stretch components to us that I've been very excited about. And I was a Jaren skeptic, still sort of am, at least on the foul trouble side of things. But that's one thing that I hope, and he's had a couple really bad games as of late. So I'm really hoping to see him rebound against Phoenix, and really hoping to see him rebound against you guys too.
I hope he rebounds against Phoenix and does terribly against us.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
like,
That's right.
To hell with Phoenix.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, Patrick and Ty, we're coming up on a little over an hour and 20 minutes. This has been super fun. I hope everybody gets to get this listen in before Christmas Day night. So tune in. Go give Patrick a follow on all of his content channels. If you're not subscribed to our stuff, make sure you do that as well. But guys, this was super fun. Hope you guys have a happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I'm going to say go Grizz. Patrick, if you want to say go Warriors, whatever, but go Grizz. And this was super fun. Can't wait to do it again soon. Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Until next time. Talk to y'all soon.